Law school. It's an investment in your future. But like all investments, without the right advice, it can lead to disaster. That's where PreLawPro comes in. Whether you're exploring the law, navigating the admissions process, or need personalized career guidance, at PreLawPro, we've got your back. Don't gamble on your future. Invest in it. Get started today at PreLawPro.com. Law school. It's an investment in your future. But like all investments, without the right advice, it can lead to disaster. That's where PreLawPro comes in. Whether you're exploring the law, navigating the admissions process, or need personalized career guidance, at PreLawPro, we've got your back. Don't gamble on your future. Invest in it. Get started today at PreLawPro.com.
How can I make myself more competitive?
How do I build my network?
I want my career to go to the next level, but I don't really know where to start.
I hate the job I am in. What else can I do?
I want to work in healthcare, but I don't want to be a doctor.
I need connections in a new industry. Where should I start?
Whether you're a college student trying to decide on a career path, a young professional trying to develop their career, or maybe you're in the mid to late stages of your own professional journey and you're looking for a new challenge, or maybe you're facing an unexpected job search. Whoever you are, wherever you are, welcome to the Professionists podcast. And together, let's find your fit. Welcome back to another episode of the Professionists podcast. Today's guest is living proof that with some creative thinking, hard work, and a dream, you can seek out a career that suits both your skills and your interests. He's one of the nation's leading nightlife promoters with over 20 years in the industry, and after a career as a college recruiter, he went on to found Red Horizon Entertainment, which was an exclusive 21 and over and special event and concierge service based in Los Angeles. In 2013, he co-founded lostangels.org, a non-profit dedicated to serving the less fortunate and homeless population in Los Angeles. And soon after that, he became a partner in sports marketing agency Inclusive. After 4 years in the sports marketing world, he went on to earn his credentials as both an NFL and an NBA certified contract negotiator. And then he founded Underdog Sports Agency, where he is today. When he isn't representing the nation's greatest sporting talent, he's investing in the next generation of professionals and entrepreneurs. You can find him on Twitter and on Instagram at @TheJohnnyCruz, or on the web at www.thejohnnycruz.com. Johnny, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Ben.
Tell us a little bit about what you studied in college.
Whoa, what I studied in college, what I wanted to study in college, or what I actually did. So back when I was in college many moons ago, they didn't have an entrepreneurial or entrepreneurship major. And, coming into college, that's, and to be honest, I don't even think they named it that. I remember meeting with my academic advisor, and he asked me, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a businessman. Yeah. And he's like, a businessman? He's like, what do you mean a businessman? And yeah, I want to own several companies. I want to be my own boss. I don't want to report to anyone. And he said, well, we don't have that as a major. And so he basically advised me, said, listen, why don't you write a proposal and petition to the Vice President of Academic Affairs? And so that's what I did. I wrote a proposal and emailed it over to the VP of Student Affairs, Dr. Watkins. I still remember that. And he reviewed it. He calls me and he's like, and he wanted to, wanted more information because he wanted to know that I was serious about that. And he was like, all right. He asked me, he's like, what exactly do you want to do? I said, I want to own my own companies. I want to manage talent, music, and in sports. And I just want, be an investor.
So you knew even then that what you wanted to do was represent talent?
Not exactly. I was just trying to figure things out because, at the time I'm 18 years old and I'm dabbling in different things. So I'm trying to figure life out. So I said, okay, let me dabble in this and see where it takes me.
Do you have so what did you actually get it approved and you studied entrepreneurship, or how did that work?
Yes.
Finishing out.
So what ended up happening under his recommendation, I ended up taking courses as part of my major. I ended up taking courses in communications. One, because in order to be a successful entrepreneur or businessman, you got to know how to communicate with people, written and orally. And I also majored or took classes in journalism and in marketing. So I combined all three things: communication, journalism, and marketing. And that was my entrepreneurial major, which, back they called it it was a special major. So if you look, I got my certificate, my degree right here hanging on my wall. It says special major.
Yeah. But it sounds like if you hadn't taken the initiative and some ownership of it, you would have been stuck just in a major that didn't really give you the skill set that you were looking for.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, I never thought of that. But it's crazy because, looking years later, I'm always, and this is my frame of thinking, I'm always thinking of things that I could have done better in the past. And sometimes I hate that about me when I'm like, I could have majored in real estate, and also been a real estate investor. I could have majored in finance, in business administration or in accounting, because also to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to know how to budget your money.
Yeah.
You have to know finances, taxes, all that stuff. Being an entrepreneur, you have to know everything.
And it's not the kind of stuff that gets taught in schools.
It isn't. Yeah,
investing is not taught in high schools. Money management isn't really taught. And so you find yourself in these situations where you might want to start a business but without the tools.
Right. They teach you how to be in college or in school. They teach you how to be an employee. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I think entrepreneurship has just become so popular in the last 5 to 10 years, especially with the way social media has made it affordable to start and a lot easier to reach people, and it gives you the ability to scale.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things is entrepreneurship can be very, very scary, and it's and it can be a lonely and very dark place. It really affects your relationships with your family, with your girlfriend, wife, or what have you, because only you know that what you're passionate about, and sometimes other people don't see it.
Yeah.
And the only person that sees it is you, yourself.
And you got to keep moving forward, even when everyone's saying, hey, Johnny. Yeah.
And a lot of praying, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
A lot of praying. Because sometimes you're just like, what did I get myself into? You know? And you're just, trying to figure things out on your own.
What did you do after college? Did you transition straight into entrepreneurship? Because I know you went and you spent some time as a career counselor. Was that the first step after career recruiter?
So I was offered a job as a admissions counselor first.
Okay.
So I worked in the admissions and records office, evaluating applications for incoming freshmen and transfer students. And that was so boring. I was in a cubicle and I was like, okay, this ain't life. And quickly went to my boss and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go out and recruit. And she looked at me and she was like, okay. And, I had the coolest boss and, she, basically made a brand new title for me. And I was out, all of a sudden I became a college recruiter and my schedule literally was 5:30 in the morning, wake up because, you got to beat the LA traffic. 5:30 a.m., wake up and be out of the house by 6:30 a.m. and sit in traffic and then be at the school at 8 a.m. because that's when the classrooms presentations start. All the high schools, they don't, there's bells and that's when classes start. So you can't be late. So yeah, that was for 8 years. I did that from 2002 to 2010.
It sounds like it was a really good way to hone some of those skills, though, because I feel like high school kids might be the toughest audience sometimes. And you got to really present a very clear and believable message.
You know what? This reminds me of one time I was at, they wanted me the college advisor at San Fernando High School asked me to address the entire senior class. I said, yeah, not a problem. I get there, it's probably, I don't know, maybe about 800 students in the auditorium.
Yeah.
And, I was terrified. I was terrified of public speaking. And so I got thrown to the sharks. You're right.
Yeah.
I went in there and high school kids can be so rude. But I caught everyone's attention, and I gave a story, of my journey, transitioning from high school to college, and everyone listened. I mean, you can hear a pin drop, and I had them. That's when I knew I had them.
I mean, it's such an important skill, almost regardless of the industry you're in. But it's consistently something that people fear a lot is public speaking.
Oh yeah, and I was one of those people. I remember, and I was so glad that one thing is what I wanted to do is challenge myself.
Yeah.
And because I had that fear, and I took those communication classes, and I'll never forget the first time I went in front of the classroom and made my presentation. I think I might have even started crying. Like one of my cheeks started shaking, quivering. My voice was definitely shaking. But I got through it. And then it just, you got to be repetitive. You got to just keep doing it over and over again. And that's what I did. And then it just kind of like, and then a few years later, like I said, I'm addressing the entire senior class at a high school. I definitely got over that fear, but it was hard.
I mean, I think that says something about the importance of putting yourself in uncomfortable positions.
Oh yeah.
So that it's no longer uncomfortable.
And that's one of those things about fear is that, yes, you will be scared, but you just have to do it. You got to be willing to make fear your ally, because it's an exhilarating feeling, it's a rush. Yeah.
Especially when you can see the people listening.
Right. Right. Yeah. And especially, if they're attentive. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you move from college recruiting to nightclubs and the entertainment promotional business?
So everything I've done in my life has been simultaneous, because I have a fear of failing. And so, you always get like motivational speakers, focus on one thing. You can only do one thing, and that's not me, I was a college recruiter, and the same exact time I say, you know what? And it didn't pay a lot of money. And just like it barely paid my rent. I just got my first apartment in Canoga Park, and I was just barely, I had enough money to pay my rent, get some food, and that's it. And I'm like, all right, I need to do something else to make, make some extra income. So I saw the 18 and over college scene, those promoters. I was like, okay, those guys, I see those guys making some money. And I said, I want to do that because I know a lot of people. So I said, let me do that. And I had to that's another thing that I had to figure out on my own. And a friend of mine, Corey, who used to play basketball at Morningside and won the state championship, Corey Saffold, Corey calls me and he says, hey, I have a venue in Century City. I spoke to the owner Memorial Day weekend, and he's not going to charge us anything, and we keep the entire door. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah. I said, yeah, let's do it. So, I put a bunch of birthdays together. That's during the time of college graduation, and so I'm telling some grads, hey, celebrate your graduation party here with me. And boom, next thing, and let me tell you, prior to that, I probably had like $5 in my bank account, if that. I was broke for years. I didn't have any money. And that night, I think it was that one night, was that one change. It was that night. So I go from having like $5 in my bank account. And by the time that event was over, I remember coming home and I put all the cash on the table and I just sat there and I stared at it because I could not believe that I had been broke, and I've never had that type of money just right there at my disposal. And, it was somewhere around, I want to say about $5,000. And it was a lot. I mean, that money, I was just like, holy, I can't believe.
What am I going to do with this?
Yeah, like I can't believe that I made this money.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to repeat this again. Me being me, I said, okay, I need to repeat this again. So I called Corey and I said, yo, I want that venue for June, because in my head, I was like, I got the UCs, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, UC Riverside, all those schools, UC Irvine out here in Southern California. I was like, and I knew people that were graduating from there. And I called them. I said, yo, I'm doing your graduation party. They were like, hell yeah. So I was like, I had everything lined up. I called Corey and I said to Corey, I was like, listen, can you give me a date over there? And, but I want full control. I want to do this by myself. He's like, no way. You have, I got the venue. I have to be your partner. I said, listen, I'll give you $500 if you give me this venue, for this date. He's like, not a chance. I was like, all right, cool. I actually bluffed. Sorry, Corey. I actually bluffed. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to just go to another venue. It's cool. He calls me back. All right, man, you can $500, but I want the $500 now. Not a problem.
I got a wad of $5,000 sitting here.
Yeah. So I gave him the $500. He gives me the venue for the night. He books it for me. Boom. Again, we do it again. Another $5,000. And then I was like, all right, I'm getting it. I know what to do now. And I just kept going. Once every month. I just kept repeating.
So is that how Red Horizon came about?
Yes, that's how it came about. And I actually started doing the 18 and over scene first and then eventually transitioned into the 21 and over scene. But yeah.
And what was it like starting out from this is your first business? What were some of the steep learning curves that you had to adjust to when you actually start making this a business as opposed to like a one-off gold strike?
One of the things is me not having a mentor. It's such there's so much money in this business. So the last thing someone that is successful in the business wants to do is teach someone else that can potentially become their competitor.
Yeah.
So there's no one out there trying to teach you, okay, this is how you make money in this market right here. No way, no chance. It's not going to happen. So I had to figure everything out on my own. And, which I didn't mind. I was like, and I made a lot of mistakes. Come to find out, years later, the reason that the owner of Harper's Bar and Grill, which was in Century City, the whole entire complex is torn down now. I think they erected another corporate office building there. But the reason I found out years later that the owner was willing to give us the venue for free is because he was making the majority of the money at the bar. Me, not having anyone teach me, I'm thinking, oh, I get to keep the money from the door, I charge, my guests, and I get to keep that. Cool. Not knowing that I could have negotiated a deal with the owner, for a percentage, which all the promoters do now. Mm-hmm. I had no clue. Again, like I had no one to teach me, So years later, I was like, oh my God, I don't believe this. All that money that I felt like that I lost because I had no idea what I was doing.
But you must have met some interesting, even if you didn't have someone to mentor. I know when you and I have talked in the past, you talked about how you got to meet a lot of people through that business that kind of led to the ultimate career where you are right now. So tell us how you moved from Red Horizon Entertainment, which was the promotional side of the business, into the sports marketing side of things.
Well, actually, it was the 18 and over that was the catalyst of going into the sports marketing. When I was doing the 18 and over nightclubs, that scene, all of the athletes in college in Southern California would come out to my events. So eventually, whether you played basketball, football, ran track, all those college kids, they were coming to my events. So obviously I had a guest list for anyone who wanted to get on the guest list. And, I'll get all these names. I didn't know who they were. So I'm like, all right, you just have to be here by a certain time. That's how the guest list works. And then next thing I know, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is the guy who plays basketball at UCLA, or this is the guy who plays football at USC, or this is the guy that runs track, at Cal State Northridge or what have you. And that's why I'm meeting all these, students who later, as years later, some of them ended up becoming great friends.
Multi-millionaires.
Oh, yeah, multi-millionaires. Yeah, you're right.
So did you kind of do that on the side, or how did Inclusive come about? Did you find a partner to work together with to kind of get into that industry, or how did that come about?
So in 2010, I was completely burnt out. I was doing being a college recruiter, and I was doing the 18 and over nightlife scene, and I was tired. Just so, like I said, I was waking up at 5:30 a.m.
Yeah, you're working 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah. I'm doing classroom presentations from 8 a.m. all day, every hour, because each class is like an hour long. So every hour, I did that for 8 years, and then turn around at nighttime. Now I would go home, go to sleep, and then wake up at like 8, 9 p.m. and to go straight to the club, go to work, and be there until 2, 3 in the morning. So I did that for 8 years.
And then turn around and get up again at 5.
Correct. 5:30.
Yeah.
And so I was burnt out 2010. And the only reason I didn't leave the university, working at the university, was because my mom was like, you'll lose your benefits, medical, dental, your 401k, things of that nature. And she was just, expressing her feelings not to leave the university because of all the benefits. And she was right. But by 2010, I was like, all right, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And I had made so much money doing the nightclubs. And I had saved all my money. So I was like, all right, I can now leave. I'm comfortable with leaving the university now. So I ended up leaving in 2010. And then in the nightclub scene, I had a couple of friends who ended up introducing me to my future business partner, Justin Giagrande, who at the time was also a nightclub promoter in Hollywood. He was down in Florida during their heyday, their national championship back-to-back.
The Tebow years.
Yes. As a matter of fact, he ended up going to the Heisman Award show with Tim Tebow. So he's like, hey, I have this idea, of starting a sports marketing agency, a bunch of athletes. So he's like, so do I. And it just made a lot of sense. And I ended up becoming a partner and invested in the company. And that was great times. And, we built our client roster to 30 plus. We had we had a bunch of guys, started with, we did a deal with Red Bull and John Wall. And then,
what does it actually mean to be in sports marketing? Like, what does that actually entail? What does it look like? Is it negotiating with sponsors on behalf of athletes?
Yes.
Okay. So how does that differ from being an agent?
Well, marketing agencies have relationships with brands already, right? Not all agents have those relationships with brands. The only relationships that agents have with brands is when they get a top pick and, these brands call them.
Yeah.
But marketing agencies, they have those relationships. So it's easier for them, to...
So you're kind of like a liaison between the agent and the companies that might want to use their talent for promotional purposes.
Right. And during that time, it was the advent of social media, right? Mm-hmm. And, Twitter was just a few years old. Instagram had just came out. So part of marketing is branding and social media management. Yeah. So that's a new thing, social media management.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I mean, it's big money.
Big money. But right prior to the Instagram, athletes and talent, they were just started getting paid for tweets. And the first from my knowledge, the first person to get paid for a tweet was actually Diddy.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you can now monetize, and now it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, now everybody's trying to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
YouTube, Instagram, you got your social media influencers, you got, these big brands like, where's that fashion brand that all the Instagram girls do? I can't even remember, but there's one brand that there's one that all, like every girl, I swear, is like they post about this brand, this fashion brand. Fashion Nova, I think. Yeah, Fashion Nova.
So how did you go from starting this sports marketing business, starting to kind of really focus some of the skills and the talents you cultivated in the nightclub world, and you're starting to get it sounds like you're starting to get a little bit of a picture of what you want to do and what vehicle is going to be the best for you. How did you go from that to working with Gary Vee and his team?
That's an interesting story. So in 2016, Justin and I make our annual trip down to Mobile, Alabama for the annual Senior Bowl. So we
Gotcha.
go out there. So every year we were going out there to go recruit players. And we fly into the New Orleans airport, and we get a rent-a-car, and we're, driving into, through Louisiana, into Mississippi, and into Alabama. So during that ride, he had gotten a text, and I'm driving, and he says to me, he's like, hey, some guys want to meet us for a breakfast meeting tomorrow morning. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I said, well, who is it? And he's like, this guy named AJ, but his brother's big on social media. And I said, who's his brother? He's like, some guy. He's like, some guy named Gary V. Justin had no idea. He's like, some guy named Gary V. And I looked at him, and I'm driving, and I look at him. I was like, dude, do you know who Gary V is? And he was like, no. But at that time, this was 2016.
Yeah.
Gary V probably had about 18,000 followers, somewhere around there. But I was one of those followers. I had saw some of his videos on Facebook, and I was like, oh, let me follow this guy. I like how he talks, and so I started following him. Maybe like 6 months to maybe to a year prior. And so when he said Gary V, I was like, really?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's his brother. I was like, all right. Set up that meeting.
We were at that breakfast. We're going to be at that breakfast.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, cool. He's like, I'm going to shoot him a text. We're going to meet with them. And so we ended up bumping to those guys at the game. And it was like, yo, we're on for tomorrow. We're like, yeah. And we ended up meeting with them. And, they tell us that they had just started Vayner Sports. And their first client was actually Alvin Kamara, running back from the New Orleans Saints. And so on our way, after the meeting, on our way back to the airport, me and Justin just discussed, it's like, we need to dissolve inclusive and align ourselves with Vayner Sports. So we get back to LA and we make the announcement, and Justin ends up becoming the EVP. I end up bringing a couple players over to the agency, and that's when I said to myself, you know what? It was a little frustrating, even back during the inclusive days, asking the agent for permission to do marketing for the client, because, they would be so threatened. And I was like, hey, like, you don't need, I'm just a marketing guy. And they're like, I don't know, and I was like, and I just said to myself, I'm going to cut the middleman. I'm going to go ahead and become the agent. So, I stepped away, and it was like a year-long journey, the screening process, the application process, taking the exam. And mind you, I did not pass the very first time I took the NFLPA exam. And it just so happened that maybe a week or two after I took the exam the first time in 2017, I applied to join the Lee Steinberg sports career seminar. Shout out to those guys, Chris Cabot and all those guys. So I ended up going to the agent seminar out in Newport Beach. And I had just, prior to me going to that seminar, I had just finished reading Lee Steinberg's book.
Yeah.
And
Lee Steinberg, for those who aren't familiar, is kind of loosely the basis for Jerry Maguire, right?
That is correct. He's the GOAT. He's the agent GOAT. And so, lo and behold, come to find out, Lee Steinberg, I attended the same high school that Lee Steinberg went to, Hamilton High School, and I'm reading his book, and he ran track and cross country, and so did I. And so I was like, oh, so, I get to the career conference, and it was like a 3-day conference, and the last day of the seminar, we get to do a one-on-one with Lee. And then I said, hey, Lee, I just want to share something with you. I read your book, and I see that you went to Hamilton High School. I ran track and cross country there. And he stops and looks at me. He's like, so you're a Yankee? I said, yes, I am. I'm a Yankee, Hamilton High School Yankee. And he's like, cool. So, we hit it off or whatever. And so I shared with him. I said, listen, I just finished taking the exam, and I just got notification that I didn't pass the exam. And he's like, don't worry about it. He said, you're take it next year and you're going to pass.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that was all the motivation I needed. And sure enough, I said, I went into that studying for the following year. I said, in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to pass this exam. It's a very difficult exam. Even lawyers, all my friends that are lawyers that have taken that exam, they say that it's comparable to the bar exam.
It does sound like a lot. Because, I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer to be an agent, but you're going to be held to a pretty similar standard.
Oh, yeah.
And so the second time you took it?
Yeah, the second time I took it, I was ready. I literally studied for 6 months prior to taking the exam every single day, whether it was minimum 3 hours. Every single day I was studying.
And what's in the exam itself? What kind of things are they asking you to cover off on?
Oh man, some ridiculous questions. I mean, it's like it's almost like, is this a trick question? Like messes with your mind. Because some of them are really like trick questions. They're so easy. Some that you're like, is this a trick question? And then some are paragraph long, and you have to do some calculations. 10 different calculations to get to the final answer.
And you're figuring out, like, is this clause allowed in a player's contract? How's this playing with the cap?
Player A, this scenario. Player B, this scenario with agent A gets fired. All kinds of crazy stuff on there. 60 questions and you get 3 hours. And yeah, it was pretty traumatizing.
Well, I think it's one of those industry that seems very sexy. Like we think of Jerry Maguire, you think of The Rock in the HBO series Ballers. What differences are there between the portrayal and reality? Yes, it is very sexy, I will say. But what they don't show, like HBO Ballers, they don't show is the agent, studying for the exam and, stuff like they didn't show that part. But it is definitely a roller coaster ride, like the show portrayed. You can get fired by your client one day, and you're down, and then next thing you know, boom, you have another client, and you can take off. Same thing happened with me with one of my clients over at Inclusive, Martavius Bryant, former wide receiver from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had just came out of Clemson. Was one of our clients. We did marketing for him, social media management, everything. He gets into a little trouble with the NFL for substance abuse and gets suspended 3 times. Gets traded over with the Oakland Raiders at the time. And, I think it's pretty much safe to say while Martavius was playing, he was probably top 15 wide receiver in the league. Some say even top 10 while he was playing. Yeah. And he calls me out the blue. He's going through all the stuff with the league, and he calls me out the blue because we had a great relationship. And he's just like, "Hey Johnny, I'm leaving my former agent, or he said he had just left his former agent, and he's like, I want you to be my new agent." So I was happy, I was ecstatic, but at the same time, I was like, oh boy, I got a lot of work to do here. Yeah. Do you find, like, when you look at your colleagues who are lawyers, do you kind of wish you had that background, or has it been one of those things where you really haven't had to have that background, you've just had to have a really good knowledge of the rules that apply specifically to the player association criteria? It definitely helps. One thing with me is that I had prior experience with negotiating contracts in music. So I can, and when it comes to music contracts, talent, booking contracts, those type of contracts, I can go through them real fast. Boom, 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 So that was my experience. And I'm like, okay, doing negotiating contracts with NFL players, NBA players can't be that much more difficult. And once I got, the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, I'm going through that. I was like, all right, well, you have the CBA, like everything's right there. All the information's right there at your disposal. Unlike in music, there is no CBA.
there is no collective bargaining agreement or someone that you can refer or some document that you can see. This is how you negotiate a music contract. That doesn't exist.
Yeah. So I guess one of the questions I have is, what does an agent actually do? Because I think you talked about what a sports marketing guy would do, which is like liaising between agent and company they're doing a deal with. Are you managing their money? Are you managing their preparation for combines and drafts and that kind of stuff? Are you having to put money up front? And then how does the business of agency actually work?
Well, let me start with this. I was told, I get calls and messages on LinkedIn all the time from college students who, want to be agents. And I tell them there's two types of agents. One agent is very good at contract negotiation, and agent number two is very good he has relationships. He's very good at recruiting. Now, very rarely you have agents that are good at both. Those do exist. And then obviously when you land, several successful clients, then you get to have a team, build a team around you, right? Which is critical. But there's a lot of agents, the majority of agents are solo, they're just have their own agency by themselves and they got to figure it out on their own.
There's not like a bunch of firms that they can go and work for, like a law firm. They tend to be sole agents, essentially, with maybe some support staff.
Yeah, no, like agents are two definitions of hustlers, in my opinion. But I'll say this, if you can know how to negotiate a contract all day long, but if you don't have relationships and know how to recruit, you're not signing it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But how do you do that? If you're thinking about coming out of college and becoming an agent, or you're in a career that you don't really want to pursue, kind of like where you were, and you decide, you know what, I think I want to give this sports agency a go. How do you even start? What would be your advice for someone looking to get into it?
How do you even start? I mean, first, foremost, you got to have a passion for sports.
Do you have to know one particular sport exceedingly well, or does it help to have kind of a general knowledge of what's going on?
You know what? For me, because I love football and basketball so much, it's easier for me. So I wouldn't know how someone who doesn't love sports, how they would approach it. I have no idea. But me as being, a fan of both sports, it just made it easier for me. Like, passion was there.
Do you have to have kind of an encyclopedia type knowledge of all of the stats of your players? And is it hard to jump from, say, hockey to basketball or baseball?
Yeah, well, because I don't know hockey, I wouldn't become an agent in the NHL. I'm sure they have NHL Players Association. They have to. I don't even know an NHL agent, but I'm sure that person, follows the sport. I wouldn't become an NHL agent because I don't know anything about that sport. I couldn't tell you anything outside of Wayne Gretzky. He might be the only person I know in hockey.
Yeah.
So, it'd be very difficult, to become an agent in a sport that you don't know anything. And for me, football and basketball, I can go. I was 5 years old staring at the TV. Watching football, watching basketball, track. I love track too. Track, boxing, MMA. Like those are my passionate sports that I remember. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to AJ from Vayner Sports not too long ago because they just added a component of representing MMA fighters. So I text him and congratulating him, and I just had a chuckle because I told him, I'm like, hey AJ, I'm a UFC nerd. I can tell you things that happen in UFC 1, UFC 3, UFC 15, when Tito Ortiz came in, Chuck Liddell came in, when Tank Abbott was, knocking these guys out. I remember all of that stuff, Same thing with football. I remember, being a little kid and watching the '85 Bears, and during the '90s, Joe Montana, all those guys. I remember all that stuff. Basketball too. I can name you all those basketball players that weren't the superstars, the deadlift shrimp, play for the Sonics, all those guys. So, yeah.
Is it easier so you talked before about how hard it was in the nightclub game to get someone to kind of mentor you and give you some of the tools. And it sounds like just knowing the game is not going to be enough. You need to have one of those skill sets, the relational skill set or the contractual negotiation skill set. If I'm, a young professional, college student, or someone looking to make a change, is the culture similar to nightclub promotion where people aren't willing to help? Or do you find that most agents that you interact with are willing to kind of help cultivate the next generation of agents?
Yeah, no, they definitely are very helpful. For example, perfect example, Lee Steinberg with his annual agent career seminar. And he's really one of the first people to kick it off. And I'm sure he's like, hey, let me, pay it forward and help the younger guys, out, and he didn't have to do that because, yes, there are those agents that, they're just not approachable.
Yeah.
And they don't want anything to do with you. If you ask one question, that's too many questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's those guys out there.
So would you recommend folks go and try and get some experience working with collegiate athletes, maybe as a manager while they're in college, or trying to get some experience in marketing? What kind of experience do you think would help people pivot into agency representation?
Yes, definitely all of the above. Definitely in social media management. I think the contract negotiation thing, how do you really learn that? I don't think unless you go to law school or, I'm like I said, in my case, I was negotiating contracts in music and with talent, but that's just, a different animal that'll come during while you're studying for the exam, then you get more of the lay of the land of how, that works. But yeah, if you, one advice that I give everyone is intern for an agent or an agency.
Yeah.
That's how you really get
watch it and see it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, currently I have 2 interns right now, one from FAMU and then another student from Rutgers University, and put them to work. He's like, okay, you guys said you guys want to learn. I'll show you.
Yeah. Learn by doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what kind of salaries can people expect? Because it seems like it's not something that you get paid a retainer for, like a set salary. It's like you do the deals, you get a cut. You do the deals, you get a cut. And those who do the deals get paid. And those who don't are eating beans on toast.
This is definitely an industry is where you eat what you kill. Plain and simple. No one's giving you a salary. No one's giving you, it's basically you sign your player, you go. So you got to hustle.
Yeah.
You got to hustle. What
kind of salary do you think a young, mid-20s trying to make a go of it in an agent, as a sports agent or working in an agency, kind of like 60, 70 kind of K coming out, and then once they start getting accredited and they start doing their own deals, that's when the real kind of coin can start coming in?
No, I don't know anyone that's going to give someone who wants to be an agent at an agency 60 or 70 K.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. Unless you're like the director of marketing or something like that. But once, like I said, this is an industry where you eat what you kill. And a lot of times what happens is an agent who's been solo with his own agency, he's, landed a few players, 5 to 10 players, and he'll get bought out by a bigger agency. And he'll join that bigger agency, and then he can negotiate his salary because, like, hey, I'm bringing all these players with me to the agency. But until that, bigger agents are like, well, what do you have? You haven't signed anything, so why would I give you $60,000?
So it's almost like the kind of thing that when you're starting out, it sounds like you do it as a side gig first until it really starts to generate some viability, and then that's when you kind of pivot into doing it full time.
Exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah. So what's a regular day look like for a sports agent? Or is there such a thing as a regular day?
No, there isn't. There's a lot of text messaging. There's a lot of, following, scouting on your own, doing your own research in your local area. I'm blessed. I'm in Southern California. California is the Golden State, produces a lot of basketball and football players. So I already know, because I have that remember, I had that background as a college recruiter. So I knew, Westchester High School, that's where the basketball players are. Crenshaw was, and these were all my schools that I was a college recruiter at. Crenshaw High School, football players and basketball players. Taft has the track players and football players. Birmingham has the football players, So on in Long Beach Poly, track, football, and basketball. So, I know all these things.
And what role do you play in crisis management? Do you have a PR team that handles that, or as an agent, some photos come out or something happens? What role do you play in that?
Yeah, you got to be. No, I do not have a crisis management team, but so I'm not PR class. When I took PR classes in college, I remember we had crisis management scenarios, and I remember all that. So of course, when, a few times I had to deal with some crisis management with some of my clients, and you got to just do the best that you can, and being a father figure, a mentor, a big brother, it's like, hey, avoid these pitfalls. Do this, not that. Look at this guy. This is not what to do. Yeah, you wear so many hats as an agent, to be honest. And from working as a college recruiter, working in nightlife, and being an agent, trust me, I've seen it all.
Yeah.
I've seen it all.
One of the things I think I have certainly heard a lot of is this statistic, and this is probably not the accurate statistic, but it's something in the order of 75% of professional athletes are either broke or in financial dire straits, disarray, whatever you want to call it, within 3 years of leaving whichever league they're in. And we talked earlier about the fact that we don't teach entrepreneurship or business skills as much as we really should in school. What do you do as an agent to help equip your clients so that they don't fall into that 75%?
Yes, that statistic is very true. And, one thing that I tell my clients is like to avoid that. Hey, there's some ways that you can avoid those traps. And one is, and I've fallen into that trap just being an entrepreneur, similar traps of being an entrepreneur. I tell my clients, learn how to budget your money, especially during your rookie contract. Your second contract, you can be, kind of like do what you want to do. And you still got to keep it a little conservative, but you got to look at the long-term effect of your finances, because you don't want to. And I've got, stories and links on my phone of, like, for example, what happened with the GQ article, what happened to T.O., Terrell Owens. Like, how do you lose $85 million?
Yeah.
Come to find out, you read that article, is his assistant, his manager, his agent, his lawyer, his girlfriend, all these people were taking from him.
Yeah.
Another story that came out a couple years ago was with Kevin Garnett. Same thing. His business partners, lawyers, so
financial advisors.
Financial advisors. To be honest, I don't recommend players get a financial advisor during their rookie contract. You can manage, with enough education, you can manage your own money like by yourself.
Squirrel as much of it away as you can.
All you need is discipline. That's all you need is discipline. But you shouldn't have somebody telling you, hey, and this is not knocking financial advisors. There's a lot of honest financial advisors out there, and a time and a place for that too. But maybe, like you're saying, the rookie contract is not the place for it. It isn't. It's not. Even when in nightlife, for example, when my clients, my inclusive clients, they all want to go. It's inevitable. They're young guys. They all always want to go out at night, party it up. And so what I would tell them, I was like, all right, get 2, 3 of them, 4 of them, or even 5 of them together. A table at a nightclub would cost you like minimum $1,500, right? And then you guys just split it. Now you got, thanks to technology, you got Venmo, Cash App, and then when the final bill comes out, 1500 with the, in California with the tax and tip, you're looking at about 1950, and 1950 you divide it by 5, and then you just cash app each other. But there's no reason that someone should be, I've seen it. These guys got I've seen it, the guys with 50, 60, $75 million contracts, blow, $50,000 in the nightclub. I've seen that.
Yeah. In a single night.
In a single night. But they're going to do what, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do, you know? But if you're my client, you're not doing that. I'm not going to allow that. No way.
Well, a happy client is going to be one who knows you've got their back and, you know, you're acting in their best interests.
Right.
What do you think is ahead for sports agency? Because we see in a lot of industries, law, medicine, management consulting, technology is changing the way business is done. What do you think are some of the changes you foresee coming to the world of talent representation and in particular sports agency?
Well, you're always going to need someone to negotiate contract on your behalf. A computer can't do that because at the end of the day, the league, they're serving in their own best interest, right? So you need an extra pair of eyeballs to look through it and, interpret that information back to the player and their family or their team. So marketing endorsement deals, yes, I can see that. There's an app, a platform called Open Doors. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but they have athletes who register themselves on the platform. And then they got these brands that contact Open Doors like, hey, we're doing some promotions for new boxing glove. We need some male and female boxers. Cool. You go on their side and go look at all the athletes that fall under those boxers, look at their records. And so is it going to be some synergy there? Is it going to work out?
And do you as an agent kind of get involved in that process at all?
Yes, yeah. Definitely. Because you just want to make sure, is this a good deal?
And does this suit our image, brand, message, whatever it might be? Yeah.
Now you see in the college sports, now college athletes, student athletes are now going to be able to benefit from their likeness. So that's definitely, it's new.
Do you think college students will ever get paid?
Of course, because they're being threatened. There's leagues. Just the other day, I saw an article on NBC that there's a young basketball league for
16 and 18-year-olds, right?
16, 18, they want to pay $100,000 per player. Wow. And remember, LeVar Ball was talking about that years ago. And everyone called him crazy.
Yeah.
For his idea. And it looks like... So you
really think it's a matter of time before the colleges have to stump up some cash?
They have to, because if someone starts a league, right, and you don't have to go to college, and then someone starts a league where they can get paid, these students I'm going to the league so I can make some money, right? And then college football and college basketball will definitely get hit, and that is their bread and butter. That's where a lot of the money is generated to run the institution. So imagine
that's right.
A powerhouse losing star players. What are you going to do?
Yeah, when are they going to source that talent to put 100,000 people in a stadium? I wanted to turn, Johnny, if I could, just to a couple of questions that we had from our listeners. I had a message from Jenny from South Carolina, and she said, I have thought that I've needed to go to law school, but I don't really want to be a lawyer. I do want to be a sports agent, and I want to work in the WNBA, but I don't know where to start. I'm a first-generation college student. Where do I start? What advice would you have for her?
Well, Jenny, I would do some research. Obviously, go on there, start with the WNBA website, and look at the guidelines and guidelines restrictions on becoming a WNBA agent. Because their criteria may be different from the NBPA. So look at their criteria. Some may not, require for you to have a law degree or even a master's degree and just a bachelor's degree. So yeah, I would start there first. And then of course, like I said previously, intern for a WNBA agent, so you can gain some experience. Those experiences, even though even if it's free, and even if you're not getting paid, that's fine. I'd rather, not get paid and intern somewhere where I know I can get valuable experience than go get paid a lot of money and do something that I don't want to do.
Yeah, and that doesn't move you closer to being what you actually want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. The second question is from Leon. He's in Dallas, and Leon's been working in the insurance sales industry for 15 years. He's got a family and a mortgage, but wants to get out and get into some kind of talent representation, whether that's sports or music, and just feels a little bit of pressure because you've got all these other responsibilities. What advice would you have for someone like Leon who maybe isn't in a position to go and take an unpaid internship?
Well, I would definitely recommend, we have 24 hours in a day. Obviously, you have your regular job. I don't know, how many hours, you're committed to that job, but I'm sure you have those extra hours right there to commit and say, every day and say, okay, I have 4 hours, this window of 4 hours every day that I can commit to doing my research, and especially right now during COVID, there's a lot of, my 2 interns that I have right now are virtual interns. I mean, meaning not virtual, but meaning everything, they're not coming into our office. They're one is in Florida at FAMU, the other one's in New Jersey at Rutgers University, and we communicate remotely. We set our Zoom call once a week, give each other updates. And, I was like, all right, guys, this is what I need from you guys this week. And then we check in with each other once a week via Zoom. So yeah, there's ways around it. You just got to want it.
Yeah, exactly. The last question I want is to run by you is, I think, kind of close to your heart, given some of the stuff that you've done in your career. Joseph's a first-generation college student. He's now a young professional, but he feels frustrated because he doesn't have a mentor and he doesn't have a natural network through family and friends. What advice would you have for him to start cultivating that network and maybe finding a mentor or two?
Where is he from again?
He's from Florida.
Florida. What city?
Orlando.
What's his name again? Sorry.
Joseph.
I would recommend Joseph to, I'm sure there are agents in Orlando, and reach out to them. And obviously, when you're not an internship, when you're not getting paid, it's rare. I mean, that agents are like turned free, free work, So they're like, if you can make yourself valuable, like, how to put together some spreadsheets, that can help an agent for his recruitment, his next class of recruitment process, then, you all of a sudden you make yourself valuable. So yeah, you just got to be creative. It's like if you know how to do graphic design, if you're very good at managing social media, if you know all the tricks and hacks on managing your Instagram page, and you can help build followers for some student or athletes. There's a lot of creative ways and things that you can do. But first,
but it all involves a bit of sweat and a bit of effort.
Right, it does. Yeah.
Johnny, this has been really helpful. Appreciate your time. If you are interested in following Johnny, as I said, you can find him on Twitter and Instagram at @TheJohnnyCruz. But you can also go and find him on the web, and his link to internships and applications associated with that are all at his website, which is www.thejohnnycruz.com. And as I said, he's the founder of Underdog Sports. Johnny, thanks so much for joining us here on The Professionists.
Thank you so much, Ben.